whispers and rumors that don't get reported. Stories I write that are often distorted. Got my notebook and pen, and I'm ready to listen. Tell me the truth, I'll consider your position. I've seen killers with eyes so cold and dead, and others go to prison because of what someone said, rotting away for the rest of their lives, leaving a hole here on the outside. Things are sad here on Earth, and it's no wonder why, when you consider the sociopaths who remain in charge. It's me who sees the system for all its flaws, and I usually start with the probable cause. My right hand is reading the probable cause. Welcome to The Probable Cause. This is a podcast covering Allen County, Indiana, and the 11 counties that comprise the Northeast Indiana region. We also tie in state news as it affects our residents. I'm Jamie Duffy, your podcast host. And a local journalist. And to my left is Michael McAlexander. He is the Allen County Prosecutor. And as I've said before, and I'll say again, we are so lucky to have him because he will give us invaluable insight, even if he disagrees with us. So today, unfortunately, my right hand will not be here to contribute. She's not feeling well, and your good wishes would be very appreciated. She's just not feeling well. So today we're going to talk about expungements and just how important they are, if they work, if they're worth the time and money. But first I think we should talk about the courts. Mike was gone last week. He went to Florida and he was in a house with a bunch of bedrooms and 12 little kids running around, or I don't know how many. But he said he did get some sleep, which is great, which is what all adults need. I don't know if any of you were aware that the film crew for 48 Hours, which is a popular crime TV show, was here filming last week. They are going to be covering the case of Allison K. Davis, a 35-year-old woman who is accused of murder. She's accused of killing her 40-year-old husband inside their home. She says he fell down the stairs, which were carpeted according to the probable cause. The detectives are saying, hey, there's a whole different story here. The right side of his skull, I believe, was crushed, and it looks as though he died right on the spot where the blow hit. And so it's a very interesting case, and I think that they're interested in it. It fits their parameters perfectly. I know Mike can't talk about that case. I'm trying to think who you've got on that. It's Tessa Helge and Tasha Lee are the prosecutors on that case. And she has 5 attorneys as on her defense team. I think one of them is one of the guys who was in the Delphi trial.
I think Mr. Baldwin.
Mr. Baldwin, and they're all from out of town. So if you have the money, you go out of town and you go to Indianapolis, where they don't care who they insult or whatever. On Monday, we have the case starting for Charles Calvert, who has been charged with the murder of Marsha Linsky. She was beloved in the legal community here, if I'm correct. She was a prosecutor. She was a magistrate. Mm-hmm. She finished out her career as public defender and defense attorney. I don't know if I'm leaving anything out. I mean, she had, I think it was over 30 years. She just did about everything you could think of. Her clients really miss her because she did a great job for them. And so that starts Monday with a special judge from Noble County. His name is Stephen Klaus. I always want to say Clues because it looks like a French name to me, but Mike is saying it is Klaus. That starts Monday. And I'm trying to think, he also has an out-of-town lawyer, but only one. I've seen this name, John Lawrence Tompkins, before. He's from Indianapolis. He was here with another one that wasn't too long ago. And for the state, it is
Tom and Tessa.
It is Tom and Tessa, that's right. And we all know what Tom and Tessa means in the legal community. It is Tom Shaley, who is the chief deputy of the Allen County Prosecutor's Office, and Tessa Helge, who's the chief counsel. And they are quite a duo. So that will be really interesting. I'm sorry I'm going to miss both of those because I will be first in Oxfordshire, going to the Oxford Magistrate and Crown Courts and seeing how they handle things. Then I'm going to go to Normandy in early May. and do the same thing in those courts, which I did last year. I'm going to be trying to send some things back from there. I have questions on how do they bail. I know their incarceration rate, for instance, is lower. I know their homicide rate is lower. So I would love to go and get some of those people on camera, and we'll see there. Also this week, Fort Wayne PD, led by Brian Martin, who is like, I call him the chief sleuth of the Fort Wayne Police Department Homicide Unit. They brought charges against 2 individuals. They were 19 and 20. See, I say the word individual. I sound like I'm from the police department. Or one of you guys, individuals. 2 guys who in broad daylight are accused of gunning this guy down. I've been to that apartment complex. I have written this up now. And if you go to www.theprobablecause.com or you go to my Facebook page, The Probable Cause, you will find the latest story has been put up there. I'll probably put it on my own Facebook page too, but I wish you guys would get used to going on either the website or The Probable Cause, because I don't always post everything on my Facebook page because I'm trying to get you guys used to where we're doing the podcast. So enough of me. We're going to talk about...
Before you get there, I just need to throw in the... my ethical responsibility to say all the people we've discussed that have upcoming trials are presumed innocent until a jury convicts them in a court of law.
You are absolutely right, and I'm always glad he brings that up, because this is America, and we still have our Constitution, and we still have the laws of that Constitution. And what do I hear all the time on TV right now? I'll think of it in a minute. Because my mind is here now. We do have a defense attorney in Allen County, but he's all over northeastern Indiana. He says a lot of people, what he says on expungements, are they worth it? Technically, they're still on the record. They still pop up on the screen. It never goes away, kind of like a protective order case. Even though it's dismissed, you're still in the system, which is kind of depressing, but that's what he says. He also says he has a lot of people calling him, well, I've been expunged, but now I want my firearm back. And he said that there was some kind of maybe change in the law in February that you can speak on. I don't know. He's saying, they want their firearms back. He said technically the state may expunge a record, but that doesn't mean the ATF has, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Federal Agency. So, and he says that's 2 different horses. So that's just an aside from one of our local defense attorneys.
Well, I think along those lines, expungement, yes, is a state law. So it expunged from the records of the state of Indiana.
Okay.
So when he says he's not sure how effective it is, if you Google somebody and there's been any news reports on it, some of those old records or news stories would show up, because an expungement does not remove anything that is in the public realm, if you will, by private media. So, and then when you get into, I just had a defense lawyer yesterday tell me that some of the state is removing those restrictions and would authorize, in some cases, a gun permit to somebody who had their state convictions expunged.
Really?
However, if they go...
Maybe that's what he's talking about.
Well, the problem is then if they go to a federal firearms dealer, they do the federal background check, and then they can't sell because it's still showing in the federal database. So it's creates some interesting questions that way.
Basically, it's a mess.
But just basic, I mean, going back to expungement, I think this statute was originated in 13, 14 years ago or so. It was before they redid the criminal code.
You mean there was an expungement before 13 or 14 years ago?
Nope.
In Indiana, but maybe elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, every jurisdiction has its own rules, kind of stuff. But
it's a word that's been around forever. That's why I'm asking.
Well, and some words like this take on new meanings. I mean, the forfeitures that are in the Indiana Constitution, for example, are a lot different than the way the forfeiture statutes that we think of today are used to seize money from
Firearms.
drug dealers and that kind of thing. But expungement as a word has been, to clear things out, but how it was used in each jurisdiction may be different. So I think at the time there was a push because of the 2009 recession, and it was hard to get a job. So people that had old felony convictions and misdemeanor convictions were having a lot of trouble getting employment. So the legislature came up with this expungement process to, after a certain number of years, that would allow people to hide or mask those, and made it legal for them to put on a job application that no, they had never been convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor offense.
Right, and they have the right to say that if they have their record expunged.
So that was what kind of drove that bus at the time. The actual statute has like 4, 5 if you count the arrest records, but then it has a separate provision for misdemeanor offenses and a separate provision for most either D felonies or now level 6 felonies. Some things are excluded. Any sex crimes are generally excluded from.
Is there any
any
sex crime
expungement.
that's only a felony 6?
Sexual battery.
I always think of crimes against children. That's the one that gets me.
And
I will write those up every time I can.
and a lot of time, and human trafficking type cases and other sex crimes cases.
Can you believe a human trafficking is only a level 6?
Well, there's variations on all of this.
Okay.
Same thing with child molesting. So, but generally those are excluded from, your major rape, murder, child molesting, those kind of offenses are excluded from the expungement.
Right. It said that only in the case of murder, let's say you were exonerated, then you have a right to seek expungement.
If you were found not guilty.
Right. Or if you were acquitted of murder.
Well, that's
because you still have that charge against you. And I have a case right now. I posted it on my personal Facebook page. This guy has a meth dealing charge from 2017 or 2018. And he's desperate to find a home where he can bring his grandmother from like Knox County because the care she's receiving is not good. And he's one of our knockabout lads, and grandma was important in his life. And he and his old lady, as he calls his girlfriend, are very concerned about her. And so I'm trying to help him find an apartment, and it's been very difficult because of this charge. And he's a good dude. He's been to my house. He's done a couple of things to fix something or whatever. And so I feel so bad for him because, he's trying to save his grandmother's life at the same time. So, yes, carry on.
That's the time frames that they put into the statute. It's 5 years.
Yes, right here.
After a misdemeanor.
5 years, it says misdemeanor or Class D level 6 felony that was reduced to a misdemeanor.
Right. Or sentenced as a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
It's 5 years, the waiting period, unless the prosecutor consents. Then on most level 6 or D felonies, it's an 8-year waiting period.
Right.
And then for more serious felonies, but not necessarily things that cause death or what we talked about before, sex crimes, homicides.
Or serious bodily injury, it says on here.
SBI is another one that, but there's a whole level of cases that, like a business burglary would qualify under that third section. You would have to wait
8 years.
8 years.
8 years, that's a long time.
Or it's actually, they originally it was 8 years, and then they changed it, I think 8 years or 3 years after the completion of the sentence, whichever is later. So they did that as another section. And then the final section for more serious that have serious bodily injury requires the consent of the prosecutor before you even file.
It says here, Class A through C, which is the old way they used to do felonies, or 1 through 5, and Class D felony, 10 years.
Yes.
From date of conviction or 5 years from completion, blah, 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 10 years since conviction of any crime. Can I ask you, how many requests do you get in Allen County every week, month, year for expungements? Is it sought after often?
We have a person who screens most of these, and he answers on response to everything. I personally see probably a couple a month that are asking for under that, because usually that's coming to me to make the decision on whether we'll agree to it up front. And generally the answer is no. If someone was hurt, I'm usually not real open. But there can be circumstances that...
Is that what most of them are asking for, is ones that did have serious bodily injury?
No, a lot of times they're just looking for getting rid of old offenses.
I mean, I had one girl when I was working at the Journal-Gazette who would call me up and beg me, because they used to make me type the felonies, which I objected to, because I said these are going to be in the cyber atmosphere, or whatever you call it, forever. It was possession of marijuana, and she must have had 2 because it was a felony okay. 6, right? And she was trying to find a job, and even her dad tried to I said, so I would go back to the tech department. Is there any way we can get rid of this? I feel so badly for this girl. And they'd say, we can't do anything.
How long ago was it?
How long was I getting phone calls?
No, when did this, because possession of marijuana, even as a felony, should have been up for expungement.
I would say when the actual charge, I honestly don't know.
Because that wouldn't be one that would be excluded even as a felony.
It wouldn't be excluded?
Yeah, it would be open to expungement after
right.
the amount of time went by.
Her point was this. Every time they look up my name, there it is. So you're right. If it's in social media, if it's in print media has printed it, you can expunge it, but there it is.
Right.
And I don't know. They don't even publish the felonies anymore because they don't have anybody to type them up, so that's fine. But those people were suffering. So.
No, in some of the crimes, it's not going to be expunged, and I would venture to say most prosecutors won't agree if there is a very identifiable victim unless that victim agrees. And sometimes you have situations, say an OWI accident where it's boyfriend-girlfriend, and boyfriend is charged with driving, and girlfriend may be sympathetic to that, or a family member kind of situation. Other times...
so you would be more agreeable in that case to an expungement?
Yeah, I mean, particularly if everybody has worked that out and the victim is amenable to it. And sometimes the victim asks us for that. This wasn't exactly an expungement, but a few years ago we had a situation where 2 young men got into it that didn't know each other. It was kind of a mistake type of case where one thought something and they were wrong, but one person shot the other person. And eventually the mothers of the defendant and the victim became friends. And eventually the victim's mother basically requested that we show leniency and give the guy another chance after he'd spent 20 or 30, almost 40 years equivalent in prison.
Well, is there such a thing as a second chance law? Because I found that for Indiana.
Well, the expungement is kind of designed for that. Our pretrial diversion is kind of designed for that. So for misdemeanors and level 5 and level 6 felonies, we can put them on pretrial diversion. Again, it depends on the circumstances and what kind of record they have and where the victim and the overall circumstances.
Well, pretrial diversion, maybe you should just briefly say what that is.
That is one where you come in and we we review your case, or your attorney approaches us and says, is pretrial diversion available? And that is simply a program where you enter into an agreement with the prosecutor's office and agree to any counseling or programs that we determine are necessary. You agree not to commit any new crimes for a period of time from 1 year. Technically, it can go up to the maximum sentence for a level 5 if it's a level 5 case. Usually we put people on for 1 year to 3 years. And if they do everything they're supposed to, pay any restitution, pay their court costs.
That's what they say here too.
Yeah.
All court or fines, court costs, all those must be paid up.
But on that pretrial diversion, we're diverting you away from a criminal conviction. The arrest would still show while you're on the program. But then at the end of the program, if you've done everything you're supposed to, the case is dismissed.
One of the people that I found when I was doing research also was a criminal justice professor and a former cop, and he's saying you really should get an attorney if you want to apply for this. Because you might want to, you could try it pro se, which means that you represent yourself, but you might not be familiar with what you need to do. So let's talk a little bit about how do you even go about getting an expungement?
Well, the statute lays out what needs to be in your petition and what to file with it, but most lay people don't know how to do that. And especially now with electronic filing, it's a little more complicated.
So can you go on the Allen County Prosecutor page and find the form?
No.
Okay, how do they find that?
I don't know that I'm not sure actually if the Supreme Court has those forms on its website. They have forms for certain things, but I don't know if the expungement is one of them.
So it would be in .gov?
Yeah.
State Supreme Court. Okay.
But you have to meet the requirements in the statute we've touched on several of them, but the time limits, no new crimes during that period of time. You had to have paid all your fines costs. Each section has a little bit different of requirements, both in timing and what is required. The first two, for misdemeanor and level 6s, it's a shall grant. So if you meet all those requirements, the court shall grant yours. On the major felonies and the one involving injury, that is up to the court. So even if the prosecutor agrees to the filing of it, that does not mean that the court has to grant it.
Is that may grant?
It is may grant.
Shall grant and may grant.
And I think most judges, depending on what their attitude is in general, would probably want to have a hearing and see what the person, how they express, what kind of answer they give to how are you different today than you were 8 years ago or 10 years ago.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because this guy who's a former cop and a criminal justice professor, he said, judges also look for an indication that the petitioner has left their criminal career behind and has lived an exemplary life since. If you're trying to seal an old auto theft conviction, it may not be persuasive that you haven't been caught stealing any more cars. If you also have some DUIs, OWIs we call in Indiana, and shoplifting charges in the interim.
Yeah.
So obviously, as a cop and a CJ professor, he's seen that before.
Well, this is the other thing. Under the statute, you're only supposed to get one shot at this.
Oh.
And you have a time frame within to get that done, because some people, believe it or not, have convictions in many different counties. So they've got to run to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different counties if they had a really bad lifestyle for a while, even if they were pretty young at the time.
Yeah.
But if they had an OWI in Noble County and a shoplifting in Allen County and another OWI in Huntington, they would have to go to each of those counties to get this done. And they only are supposed to be able to get one time at this. So there have been times when people have come in, attorneys have come in with a 19, 20, 21-year-old, and they say they want to do an expungement. And I'll say, are you sure? Because if they haven't put that life behind them, they may be really jeopardizing something that maybe they will turn around by the time they're 30 or so. But if it's just kind of a convenience thing, I'd recommend if you're not pretty sure you're not doing those things anymore, that you should wait until you're really stable.
Well, and probably that 20, 21-year-old is pressuring the attorney. Hey, I want an expungement. So he brings him in, probably a him, but it could be a her. And you kind of lay the facts and say, well, all right.
Usually with the young ones, it's probably the parents that are paying for it, and they want the record cleared. But,
but if they're
it's just one of those things
you
you should look at.
If they're paying for it, we'll get into some of the problems here. But this guy, I do like what he said. In an ideal world, expungement would erase all evidence of the crime being expunged. In the real world, there will almost always be some residual indication of the offense. If you did substantial jail or prison time, there will be that gap on your resume that isn't accounted for with work or school. And so he goes on to say, the cop who arrested you might remember the incident, and he can be subpoenaed to testify if the old offense could be an issue, which sounds like a real drag, almost sounds like Les Miserables to me, Jean Valjean, Javert, and all that. In a less formal procedure, a potential employer or background investigator might just call the officer and ask, hey, do you remember arresting so-and-so? So it's, I want to say catch-22, that's such a cliche, but it is a little bit like that. You do one thing and it's like you feel like the system is really against you. Also, the jail or prison still has the booking record, he says.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah.
And there is a provision, if you will, a clawback provision that we have 5 years after an expungement is granted if you do something that we can go back and resurrect that conviction.
Have you done that much? Does that come up?
I don't think we've done it much, but probably where it would come up the most often is like on OWIs, because there's a 7-year period that if you commit another OWI, say you have a misdemeanor OWI, and within that next 7 years, if you commit another OWI, that can be elevated to a felony.
Right. Yeah, the first OWI is a misdemeanor.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you really are jeopardizing everybody on the street. I have a hard time with that one. Here's some guy that says, if you get a chance for expungement, take it. He said, today anyone can run a background check on you in minutes at a very low cost. This will affect your chances of decent employment. This may hurt you when it comes to renting a place to live, as I told you about in my friend who's desperate to find, and we are working on that. It may also hurt you if you need credit. Another point, if you pursue professional licensing in many fields such as real estate or engineering, you may have to jump through many hoops to convince a board that you are suitable for licensing in spite of your felony record. He says he earned an engineering degree after serving his sentence. After graduation, it was several years of struggle before I finally had an opportunity for professional employment. It would have been easy to give up and settle in life as it was. But you can be successful in life with a felony. I believe I have been, but not having that record hanging out there will make life a little easier.
There are consequences for your actions. And going back to what you said about there being some evidence, no matter how many official records you wipe out,
right?
There are media records. And if something was in the media at any time, you Google somebody and who knows what will come up. So the expungement statutes are an effort to give somebody a legal basis to come back, but that doesn't mean that everybody's memory has forgotten it.
Right.
And I think that's probably very much pronounced in smaller towns where everybody knows everybody kind of thing.
I think one of the things about the labor market is that felons do get hired.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy has a union job. So that is a bright point in that people are desperate for decent employees. There is a real dearth of those. We need people who are skilled labor, in particular, CNC machinists. They'll even train you on the job now. And if they're that desperate, that is the one thing you guys out there who are thinking, maybe I should get an expungement. It's also a terrible weight, like if 20 years ago you got an OWI and you're still living with that. And I do have sympathy for somebody like that who never got an OWI, decided, hey, I'm going to turn my life around and I'm going to do Ubers from now on. Or I'm just going to sit in my car and sleep it off by the police station or something, some responsible behavior. So another thing here is that the housing opportunities we've gone over. This one kind of shocked me because let's say somebody is like trying to turn his or her life around. Financial aid. Certain convictions can affect eligibility for student aid, but expungement can help restore this eligibility. So that kind of surprised me that, you can't get into a program that would maybe teach you how to be a welder or teach you, you would go back to maybe you want to be a social worker because you've lived through a lot of this. And that might affect your eligibility.
Mm-hmm. I mean, again, there are consequences to a criminal history that go beyond whether you're on probation or parole or in prison that will follow you around for a long time, potentially.
Does reentry court, I know you're not in charge of reentry court, it's the courts, but do they help those guys get jobs?
Mm-hmm.
They do. Okay, well that makes
we've brought people out on reentry, convicted murderers, and found jobs for them.
Convicted murderers?
Mm-hmm.
They literally got out?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that shocks me. So here's another area, okay, insurance. Some auto insurance companies use criminal history to assess risk. Expungement can reduce this risk and potentially lead to lower insurance premiums. So, okay, you've gotten it expunged. They might find out on social media that you were charged, but because you're allowed to say, no, I wasn't convicted, you might be able to get lower insurance premiums.
I presume so. I think so many of these things, the more time that goes by, the less it's held against you.
Right. Well, that's a good thing. If somebody's proving themselves and, like this guy, let's say, I could look him up again, it was either 2017 or 2018, where he had the meth dealing charge. And then when you get to meth dealing charges, it's like, okay, how much did he actually have, right? Because I was working on that probable cause last night. Supposedly they robbed this guy for cocaine. He had an ounce, the guy that they robbed. That this is what one of the witnesses said, and it's just allegedly all right now. Well, I looked up an ounce. That's worth a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Because an 8-ball is only 3.4 grams. So, yeah, they got charged with robbery, and mm-hmm. It was worth a lot of money. I don't know where I got onto that. Well, here we go. Cost. There are filing fees associated with expungement petitions, which can range from $160 to $180. Do you happen to know what Allen County charges?
No. But I believe filing charges for civil action are in that neighborhood.
Civil action, okay. Yeah, I do see it float through sometimes when I'm on my case that there's mm-hmm. an expungement. So I think that's interesting. All right, let's see what other goodies I have here. You want to say anything else while I'm sitting here? Because there was the engineering guy. The only other one, I don't know how we're doing on time. We're getting there. Pardon me?
34.
Oh, okay. So the last one, which I think is hilarious, and you guys tell me if I left anything out, because we've gone over cost, we've gone over the burden of having a criminal mm-hmm. record, we've gone over. Did we talk about sealing a record versus expunging a record?
I don't know that there's a practical difference.
Really?
Generally, when we talk about sealing a record, we are talking about probably the most common ones are a search warrant or a probable cause affidavit if the person doesn't know. We don't want it published or on the record that if somebody thinks you're coming after them, that they can go online and say, oh, you're going to come and search my house, or you're going to come and arrest me, so that you're given a heads up to take off. So we ask frequently to have a probable cause affidavit or arrest warrant sealed until we can pick somebody up. But then it's unsealed.
Okay. It says here that sealing means the record is still legally kept, but it's hidden from public view. While many people may not see it, certain government agencies and law enforcement can still access it. It says, additionally, some employers, such as those in law enforcement or for gun licenses, may still be able to see sealed records. I think we kind of talked about that. One shocker to me is that they're not allowed to vote if they have a record. This guy who's got a meth dealing charge from 7-8 years ago is not allowed to vote?
You're not allowed to vote if you're imprisoned or in prison as a convicted felon. I am not real sure. I'm sure after you're off probation, and I don't know if you're restricted from voting while on probation. I know they aren't running voting precincts out of the prison system. I think there have been some lawsuits in the last couple of years about people sitting in jail awaiting trial that wanted to vote, and the sheriff, guess wasn't going to let them out to go vote. So I know there were restrictions that way, but I'm not sure once you're on probation if you can go ahead and vote.
I don't know. That one really bothers me because my ancestors fought in the Revolutionary War, and I feel like they were fighting for felons too. I think if you're a U.S. citizen, you should be able to vote no matter what.
No, I mean, there are a lot of civil rights you give up when you become a convicted felon.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you and I could disagree like mad on that one. Okay, here's the last one. I think you're going to get a laugh on. Yeah, I think you're going to get a laugh out of this. So 8 years ago, this guy writes into Quora, and he says, if you can get expunged, you should. It depends on what you want, why you want it gone. But he said, and this was 8 years ago, I tried to look up and see who the San Antonio DA was, and I couldn't really link it well. All right, San Antonio's current district attorney in his younger days was arrested for trafficking narcotics and tried to get that felony expunged so he could do his run for district attorney. Okay, he said it actually drew more attention to it when he tried to get it expunged, but he did get elected anyway.
Well,
so there you go.
We actually have a Indiana prosecutor who's been a longtime prosecutor and well-respected, who as a young man got I'm not sure if it was a burglary, but a felony conviction, and worked his way out of that, went to college, became a police officer, and then went to law school, and has been an elected prosecutor for, I think, over 20 years.
And so as a young man, he did what?
He got in trouble with the law and I believe went to prison. And he was, it's a wonderful success story.
Yeah. And there's another story we're going to get on the probable cause where there was somebody who spent 20-some years in Indiana prison. He did get his record expunged. He's now a police officer. He didn't go to law school, but he even spent about 10 years in solitary confinement, which I am going to ask our European friends in France and England, do you have solitary confinement? I would urge you to listen to the last podcast with Sheriff Troy Hirschberger. That's going to be uploaded at any second because I discussed solitary confinement with him because the murder conviction from last week, she spent 50% of her time in the hole, which I do think changes you. And he said you spend 23 hours out of 24 hours in a little room. I don't know how that does anybody any good. So I'm going to ask them, do we have solitary confinement? But anyway, he spent 10 years there, and his is a success story. But when he got out, he had people who helped him. Even the judge up in Steuben County, he wiped away the guy's traffic offenses because he got sent to prison for being a habitual traffic offender, which we also covered in like the first or second podcast that we did. So anyway, Mike, last word before I close.
Well, the best way to avoid this is don't commit crimes in the first place.
So typical of prosecutors.
But, I think this program, from an employment standpoint, it doesn't absolve everything, and I think people are foolish to believe that it will. It becomes part of your history. You have to live with it. You have to own it. But the legislature has attempted to offer a path to help in making recovery easier and a path that incentivizes good behavior.
Right, and it can lead to a more normal life.
Yes.
Which is what we all need. Okay, well, for now, this has been The Probable Cause. It's a podcast. You can find us on our website at www.theprobablecause.com. Also, our dedicated Facebook page, The Probable Cause. And I urge you to go to those two sites because sometimes there's good stories on there that I write up that I don't put on my personal Facebook page. And so for now, goodbye. This episode is filmed and edited by Frosty Pictures. The Probable Cause is produced by Maumee Media.
Worried when I crossed the Michigan line, a cop from Steuben County waiting on I-69. A headlamp went out while he pulled me over. Charged me with possession after I rolled down the window.
Now that's skunk.
Indiana's a trip when it comes to weed. It's like who doesn't smoke or use gummies? Your grandpa, your brother, your rich friend from school? Hell, throw in the whole courthouse and my attorney too. It's time those assholes change these stupid laws. It ain't worth the paper for a probable cause. Sitting on a bar stool in my usual place, this guy next to me said he was looking for some cocaine. Hell, I just sold him an 8-ball with a little piece off for me. But my buyer was a cop? Should have known he was a creep. So I'm a dealer, right? You gotta be kidding. It's a rich man's drug. I just take it because I'm injured. 8 years in Westville with a monkey on my back. There's more drugs in here than you can shake a shank at. One dirty drug test, man, this system's flawed. Undercover screwed me in my probable cause. Street crimes never did me no favors. I'm hooked on Fetty. I'm a junkie, not a felon. Told that son of a bitch on the way to lockup. I can't seem to shake it. I need help, not mocking. What do you want from someone who's been through the system? Drugs all through the house before mom and dad went to prison. Throw me in jail and give me a fine? Someday I'll be dead and away from your kind. Now I'm at the courthouse in front of a judge. Can't say my public defender cares for me much. Crimes are committed on both sides of the law. God help me now with this probable cause. Sea shift never gets old. Anything can happen when you're out on patrol. You think I'm just eating donuts, man? Give me a break. Nothing on this job is a piece of cake. Lights and sirens activated. This knucklehead wants to chase. Baby mama at the scene just spit in my face. Wife's worried that someday I won't be pulling up at all. You'll read about my killer in a probable cause. Man. She went through my phone and she seen my text. I told her forget it. It was just my ex. She took a swing and knocked me flat. Man, I went wild to get her back. Judge slapped me with a no contact order. Now she's got the kids and she's staying with her mother. So she started it all and I have to take the fall. You can read my whole story in the probable cause. When I was young, caught a case for dealing and did my time. Yeah, I got a record, but I was doing fine. Running my own business on the southeast side. Yeah, I got a gun. I kept it on hand. Told the cop my reason, thought he'd understand. In this neighborhood, you need some protection. Attorney thought I could get just community corrections, but the judge decided to send me to prison. Can't get ahead no matter how hard I try. Read the probable cause, it'll make you cry.
Whispers and rumors that don't get reported. Stories I write that are often distorted. Got my notebook and pen, and I'm ready to listen. Tell me the truth, I'll consider your position. I've seen killers with eyes so cold and dead, and others go to prison because of what someone said, rotting away for the rest of their lives, leaving a hole here on the outside. Things are sad here on earth, and it's no wonder why, when you consider the sociopaths who remain in charge. It's me who sees the system for all its flaws, and I usually start with the probable cause. My right hand is reading the probable cause.